one thing that comes to mind when I look at these results is to say, a country that chooses to make English compulsory, but agriculture to be optional, will produce citizens that speak English eloquently on an empty stomach. So we must be clear about what we want now and what we want tomorrow.
Hi everyone, this is your host Nola Kabo, and you're watching The Politics of Politics. This show delves into the heart of South African politics. We bring you political, religious, and civic leaders that shape the dialogue and the future of our country. It is important conversations because they affect my future and they affect your future. And today, I'm quite excited to introduce you a business mogul that has shaped South African business landscape for over 40 years. He is the Vice Chancellor, he's the Chancellor actually, of the University of Free State. He's the President of Business Unit South Africa and holds, amongst many other positions, the professorship at University of Pretoria, and he is the Chairman of Bidvest. I'm talking none other than Professor Bonang Mohale. But before we speak to Mr. Mohale, here's my political agenda. The political agenda is a segment of the show where I share my thoughts with you about something that I find interesting and that was trending from a political standpoint. And today I want to talk about the multi-party system. In simple, the number of political parties that have declared their intention to register to contest the 2024 elections. According to the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa, the IEC, we are expecting to have just over 350 political parties contesting the 2024 elections. Now, I've spoken to many people and this is overwhelming. It really discourages them. And I don't want it to discourage you. I want to introduce a concept to you. For a very long time, South Africans have been passive voters. I would like to implore you to be active voters. The difference here is very simple. Passive voters sit at home. They wait for a leader to convince them to come to the polling station on the day to vote. If the leader says something that they like, they vote for them. If they say something that they don't like, they don't vote for them. But they don't blame the leader or the political party. They blame the whole system. We come from an era where people were saying we do not have options. Now we are complaining about too many options. The truth of the matter is that it shouldn't worry us that there's 350 parties. By the way, most of those people are influencers and one-party companies. What we're looking at here is a system where you need to go out and look for the information. And just to make it simply for you, here's my guide to navigating all of this. Pick 5 parties that are in your consideration set, whether on the basis of their track record or what they're promising. Go onto their websites, see what they stand for, follow their leaders for 6 months. Go into their social media sites. From there, you will whittle it down to 3, to 2, and eventually you will pick a party that you would like to vote for. I've got bad news for you. It's not about to get any easier. 350 could be 400, could be 500, but your future is at stake. And from that perspective, it is important that we develop a culture of active voting. Gone are the days when politics was simple, when some party will stand up every 5 years and promise you free things and jobs and never delivers, and blame the leader and put another president in it and tell you this president is better. Or another party that believes that Western Cape should be a country on its own, which is ridiculous. But they do not want to engage in very hard matters that trouble South Africa. Or another party that believes that all our problems begin and end with white people and land, and if we can sort that out, voila, Eskom will also be fixed. What you need to do then is to look beyond that. And that is why we are here. And that's why I really encourage you that over and above being an active voter, you should subscribe to our show and like our channel. But if all of these things sounds confusing to you, remember, there is no perfect politician. This is the battle of angels with horns and devils with halos. You need to pick the least of the evil. If you're looking for a perfect political party, it's like a woman who's looking for a perfect man or a man who's looking for a perfect woman. They do not exist, but your future is at stake. And if, again, all of this is too overwhelming for you, remember John 14, verse 1. You believe in the Father, so also believe in me, because I will guide you through this. And remember, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. As promised, we have Prof.Bonang Mohale with us in the studio. Dr. Mohale, welcome.
Ke a leboha.
Nice to have you in the show, man.
Bakwena ba itebohela.
Can't need.
Thank you, sir.
But before we get into it, here's a little insert about what the man is about.
Bonang Mohale, an esteemed South African figure, is a force in various leadership roles. As Chancellor of the University of the Free State, Professor of Practice at the Johannesburg Business School, and the Chairman of Bidvest Group Limited and SBV Services, his impact is profound. Former CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, he steered influential dialogues with the government and advocated for pro-business policies. With a distinguished career in multinational companies like Shell and leadership roles at SAA, Sanlam, and more, Mohale is a change agent and a defender of democracy. His accolades include the Forbes Women Africa Male Gender Advocate Award and the BMF Lifetime Achievement Award, recognizing his bold and courageous contributions.
So, Dr. Mohale, how was Davos?
You know, this was my 21st Davos World Economic Forum.
Yes.
At Davos, the Cloisters.
Wow.
And instead of just coming back with some theoretical notes that we've made, for me, the incisive story is the fact that on the 54th anniversary of Davos, yes, Davos was 10% bigger than the same period last year. But how the dream of one man, this German-born engineer and economist, Professor Klaus Schwab,
Yes.
has now put Davos as the center of the world.
Wow.
By his actions and by hosting this prestigious event, he has now brought about a complex interplay between issues of the environment and the economy, all for the benefit of his people. Davos now hosts this event every January, but the tourism comes all year round.
Okay.
And the benefit, you see it in the hotels that are there, you see it in all the downstream businesses, the chauffeur services, the taxis, the gifts that we get, the farmers that plant the food that we eat. And by so doing, the determination of one man to ensure that you catapult your people out of obscurity and you locate them firmly as a significant part. Here's a small anecdote. So Davos this year is 15th to the 19th, Monday to Friday.
Okay.
But on Thursday, the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, decides to make an important announcement. Out of 222 countries and locations in the world, he chose to be in Davos just one day before, that they've commenced negotiations about his 10-point peace plan that he has been selling.
But commenced negotiations with who? With Russia?
With Russia.
That's very interesting. And I want us to get actually into most of that. But, you know, it's actually quite interesting because there's just so much for us to cover. And I always get told I get given 40 minutes, you know. So, Jackie, so can we get extra time today?
No, you have 40 minutes.
No,
if you can't do it in 40 minutes.
No, but it's important because I've got two dilemmas here. The first dilemma is the time because there's just so much I want
I'll come back again.
Too.
I'll come back.
Come back. So, yes. Jackie, can we have extra time?
40 minutes. That's all he has.
We can be gracious.
I know these blacks. They're always asking for more.
You give them a hand and then they want the whole entire.
Please, just for today. Just for today.
We'll make the exception. I mean,
Thank you.
We do have incomparable
Thank you so much. Look, one of the things, by the way, the reason why I want extra time, there's this book, okay, Behold the Title, which is book, Prof, but it's the second book. The first one was Lift as You Rise. So, but I've got both, but this is my favorite. And if anyone really wants to understand leadership, and I like how you go into the different segments of it, and we're going to go through some of that a little bit. Love it. So I know you're going to enjoy Mr. Mohale. This is the book that you need to get. So Jackie, I've got
Extra time. We'll give you extra time.
Okay, 41
fantastic.
We're
minutes.
not going to do
40.
this.
That's 41.
41, right?
41.
Fantastic.
He's got his extra.
Thank you very much. So Mohale, let's start from the beginning. You get arrested in 1976. You are 15. Can you paint to us the mood and of the environment at the time? And I'm asking this in the context of where we're going to go with the discussion, because most of what we're going to talk about is business. You wear many hats. One of them being the president of Business Unit South Africa. You've led Business Leadership South Africa before. You're the chairman of Bidvest, etc., etc. So you are one of the respected business leaders in our country, not only because of your experience and not only because of the hats that you wear, but also because of how forthright you have been in diagnosing the problems of this country, and going beyond the diagnosis to what could be the solution to our problems, and some of it is in the book. If anyone is interested in that, Exclusive Books has it. So that's there's more information in there. So most people may not know you, especially Matuke, and then you titled your book Behold. They don't know what Behold is, but it's they'll buy the book and they'll learn from that. Give us a little bit of your history, and maybe from those days of 76, 77, going into your studies at Wits, going into your trips between campuses and the UDF link in Cape Town, and how you, because I think it's important for people to see that your love for the country did not start now because you're in business, but your passion for a better South Africa came from when you're still young.
So one of the things that we should not be proud of is to be the first black in the room. And similarly, we should not wear the badge that we've been arrested like a badge of honor on our forehead. Mandela, Sisulu, Tambo can.
Yes.
But the rest of us must work, because there's a piece of work that needs to be done. Countries and economies are created by producing goods and services that others want, and if you get it right, you can name your price. I think it should disturb us hugely that the good Lord has blessed us with all the minerals that the world needs, not as number 17 and 19, but number 1 or number 2. And yet we're failing to seize the moment to capitalize on this. We go to the belly of the earth, we risk life and limb to bring these diamonds. And the buyer determines the price in the form of the London sales office. It doesn't happen everywhere else in the world. Where you grow your vegetables, you face the elements, trials and tribulations. You produce the potatoes and the tomatoes. And then you go to the station and you say to the buyer, what do you want to pay for this? If we don't think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others. It is up to us to create our own new world. If we don't tell our own stories, other people will tell our stories in the manner that we don't like. Therefore, we need to be the ones that tell our stories. Yes. My grandmother used to say, until and unless lions have their own storytellers, stories about hunting will always glorify the hunter.
The hunter.
Not the lion.
Yes.
And we know that history is up to the temporary occupants of the corridors of power. the victors write the history. We've been free for 30 years. We are yet to write our own history because we are yet to deal with our extreme trauma that we went through because of the 370 years of colonialism, 98 years of separate development, and 48 years of institutionalized apartheid. But we can't, 30 years into democracy, still look back and want to blame apartheid. Let me end by saying, we've just released the grade 12 results. We used to call it metric.
Metric, yes. Form 5.
Yes, but the one thing that comes to mind when I look at these results is to say, you know, a country that chooses to make English compulsory, but agriculture to be optional, will produce citizens that speak English eloquently on an empty stomach. So we must be clear about what we want now and what we want tomorrow.
Ooh, I like that. I really like that. But then the Mohale, others would say, agreed with everything that you said, depending on which side of the political divide you belong. If you belong to the left and you are part of the EFF and all the other parties on the left, you would say that's a very easy problem to solve. The reason why we have not developed is because white people are hogging all the minerals. And if we can solve that, that's the end of our problems.
But you see, you have hit the nail on the head. And until and unless we understand the root cause, we'll run into trouble. So our economy has not shifted, and we haven't changed it because we don't understand what it was designed for. The tussle was, do we give this country, the British had to go through this, to these African elites, or do we give it to the Afrikaners? The test came to just three things. One was, who is going to guarantee us a pool of cheap labor forever? Number two was, can we get the first right of refusals to the gold that comes out of South Africa? Lastly, they said, even when you produce the diamonds, which at that time was the most precious metal, we need to place the pricing of these diamonds in the London sales office. Those three things, fundamentally, structurally, we have not changed. I'm not talking about easy things.
Sure.
Like, for 30 years, we have not changed the apartheid spatial planning, where black people today in this country, in this context, where so many of us dare to hope that joy and peace will prevail, are still living on average 40 kilometers away from their place of work, which means one way they travel to work at least 40 minutes and another 40 minutes back.
Were we outplayed, or does it mean the ANC has failed?
Yes, but here's the thing. Now 40% of their money is spent on transport.
On transport.
If you add food, that's 70%.
Absolutely.
Which means structurally, it is impossible for most Africans to save. Therefore, the problem can't be low saving rates for Africans.
Absolutely.
It should be, have we solved where we are building new houses for them? Is it us or have we been played? It doesn't matter what ticket you have come on. President Cyril Ramaphosa won with 178 votes in the 54th elective conference of the ANC in Nasrec, with money that comes from a variety of people, mostly from business. When you get into office, you don't care about who financed you.
Yes.
You don't care about the people who ran your campaign.
Yes.
You take your right hand, you put it on the Bible,
Yes.
and you say, I swear to uphold, respect, and protect the
Constitution of this
of the country. And I believe in its supremacy, not the party, not the people who funded me. Therefore, there's nothing that stops you when you read the Constitution and it says, it is the sole prerogative of the sitting president to appoint his cabinet. Not the top six of the ANC, not the National Assembly.
Not the NEC.
To bring women and men that can bring a better life for all. But 30 years into democracy, it should worry us that poverty still has primarily a black and feminine face. You just have to be born black.
Yes.
The chances are you are condemned to live in Alexander in an
Yes.
informal settlement.
But
and the corollary is also true. born white, the chances are you are destined to the leafy suburbs of Bryanston.
Yes, yes. And I think and that's what I like about you, Prof, in terms of how you cut directly into the problems. Here's the question. What is business saying about all of these things? Because in some political circles, business is being blamed precisely for the status quo remaining the way it is. And the narrative is that business funds anything that will advance its interest and not the interest of workers or black people. It's almost like the two are mutually exclusive. An average person out there believes that all the money is sitting with business and capital, and as a result, business is slowly becoming the enemy of the people, even though it's really the one that is also employing people. What is business saying about this increasing negativity and hostility towards it and its operation and its lack of transformation?
So let me start first with the solution. Business can continue to fund political parties and now individuals for the first time in the history of our country.
350 odd, yes.
365
yes.
Political parties, and still growing,
yes.
already registered with the
yes.
NEC. Proportionate to the representation.
Yeah.
Business now must start agitating and orchestrating for a desired outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a problem when your own employees can't afford the goods and services that you provide. Even Henry Ford got this,
yes.
to say we can't manufacture cars that our own employees cannot afford.
Yes.
Therefore, I think it would be amazing if business can club together and say, we will only fund those political parties or individuals that sign up to no more than 5 things. Number one, transformation, because this economy must look like us, broadly reflective of the demographics. Number two, ethical leadership. Number three, good governance. Number four, service delivery, because that's what they're paid to do. Lastly, law and order. There is no political party that can be at odds with these 5 things. So especially the opposition, they can coalesce and come together around just these 5. On the other ideological things, yes, they can keep them aside. If they did that, the ZANU and ZANU Patriotic Front can be created here, right now, as we speak, and accelerate the delivery of a better quality of life for the majority of our people. But why is business being looked at the way it is? Nobody needs to blame business. They brought this onto themselves. Because just 2 weeks ago, we learned that SAP, the ICT company, had admission of guilt and paid the equivalent of 4 billion rands, $200 million US, for doing things that they shouldn't have done. And they were not the first. McKinsey paid back.
Eskom, Bain and Company did the same.
KPMG, etc. So business brings it onto itself. Steinhoff, Tongaat, they do this. So I think what we need to accept, and what business needs to accept, is that business needs a serious intervention to steer it back. Because business itself must provide the type of leadership that is required to take it out of this mess. But you see, let me end by saying, business cannot continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty. Because doing good is good for everyone.
But then, it's and I like what you're saying, but then these conversations, I mean, I follow politics a lot and I follow economics a lot. But sitting here, I still don't know the difference between BUSA and BLSA, for instance, and BBC, Black Business Council, etc. And it gets very confusing sometimes to figure out who is speaking on behalf of who. Can you break it down for me and for everyone else in simple terms? These business unit federations that bring business together and lobby for business on behalf of government, what is their mandate and why do we have so many?
And it's even more confusing because I'm a member of all of them. So I've been a member of the Black Management Forum
Yes.
for more than 33 years. Ended up being their president
Yes.
and served on their board.
Yes.
Because of that, the 27 black organizations are now members of the Black Business Council.
Yes.
Black Business, just for black businesses.
Yes.
But because we live in a democracy and Mandela gave us the freedom to choose,
Yes.
I then took an early retirement from Shell at age 55.
Yes.
And these CEOs asked me to come and help them to be the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa.
Okay.
The old SA Foundation that was formed in 1960,
Yes.
before even I was born,
Okay.
for primarily two things.
Yes, because it was SA Foundation and then the black side had NAFCOC.
Exactly.
Yes.
To create, number one, to protect apartheid, to defend apartheid, and number two, for sanctions busting. That's why I was excited and energized when they said, come and be our CEO. And I said, if I can get into the belly of the beast and eat it from inside. And I said, but if I come, do you guys promise that you will take transformation seriously? Not only in words, but also in deeds.
Yes.
They said, yes. I said, then I can help you to transform. That's why the strategy of Business Leadership South Africa rests really just on 3 pillars. Number one, it's about bringing about an inclusive socio-economic growth and transformation, which is almost tautologous. Now, when you say include, who do you want to include?
Yes.
Black people and women.
Yes.
It's very clear.
Yes.
The second, we said we wanted to protect the key state institutions. Because remember, this was at the height of state capture. Last, we said we want to position business as a national asset, to be loved and respected and trusted by people of Alexander, Soweto, Nkandla, Mondlolanga, and Gugulethu,
Yes.
who up until now thought business is an enemy.
Yes.
And I think we made incredible business,
Yes.
progress towards that. That's why even the launch
Yes.
of BLSA's own program was
Yes.
done in Alexander, where
Okay.
most CEOs were going there for the first time.
Oh, okay.
So now President Mandela comes as the father of the nation, and he says, I am the president of black and white, young and old, male and female. And that's why he coined the word Rainbow Nation.
Yes.
That was reiterated and popularized
Yes.
by Archbishop Emeritus
Desmond
Mpilo Desmond Tutu.
Yes. Yes.
And then he says, I only have 220 days in a year. And if I meet all these organizations, half my days will be gone. So I want all you 127 organizations to go to a place in the National Kruger Park called Skukuza and talk about United Voice of Business. Because we have united all labor under COSATU.
Yes.
That's why we formed Business Unity South Africa. He gave that job to the then Deputy President Thabo Mbeki.
Yes.
A few of us were then asked to come back a few weeks later to go to another camp inside the Kruger called Mopani to draw a 3-pager called the Mopani Memorandum of Understanding that gave rise to the modern day BUSA. We then asked Dr. Patrice Tlhopane Motsepe to be both the president of Business Unity South Africa, the United Business,
Yes.
but also all the chambers of commerce called Chancellor to be the president of both, so that this unity finds expression in just one man that we loved and trusted. And Dr. Patrice Motsepe did that. So fast forward to today, BUSA is the apex organization of other organizations.
Got it.
When it was conceived, it wasn't meant to have individual members.
Yes.
It's like COSATU. COSATU, nobody says I'm a member of COSATU.
Sure.
But you are a
NUMSA
member of
or-
your own union.
Yes.
Yes. National Union of Mine Workers,
yes.
SAMU,
Yes.
etc. You belong there.
Yes.
So today BUSA has 40 of these organizations. And business leadership is just one of the 40.
Okay.
All the mines belong to the old Chamber of Mines,
Yes.
now called the Minerals Council
Yes.
of Southern
Yes.
Africa.
So
It's member number 2.
Yes.
The other third member will be all the banks.
Yeah.
They belong to the Banking Association of Southern Africa, called BUSA. They are member number 3. That's how, in its purity, it became, and because of that, it was rewarded by saying you'll be the only representative of United Business at NEDLEC.
At NEDLEC level,
where
yes.
initially it was government, business, and labor.
And labor.
And then later on, as we started engaging, we said, but we need civil society to complete this wheel of ensuring that we have been totally and absolutely participative, but most importantly, consultative.
But yeah.
There's BUSA, there's been business leadership South
and
Africa.
others.
But when BUSA was formed, it was actually the BBC with its 27 organizations that came as part of the 127 organizations to form BUSA.
Okay.
And at that time, it was the BMF that decided to pull out of BUSA, the excuse being, but you are not serious about transformation. And they went back. As they went back, we then realized at Black Business that we were probably wrong in disbanding Black Business Council, because the SA Foundation, now called BLS, actually didn't disband.
Just changing
Became stronger.
Yes.
And it recruited some of us,
Yes.
like Bonang, who then became the CEO
Yes.
of BLSA.
Yes.
So they continued. And they had offices, they had fax machines, etc. The BBC was normal.
Yes.
So that awoken us, and then we reformed BBC 2.0 with a sponsorship from, again, funny enough, Dr. Patrice Tlopane Motsepe, who gave us the initial seed funding of 3 million rand. When the BUSA itself, when it was formed, the first 2 MDs came from the BMF in the form of Usoto Beutata Upegisbe.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
was followed by Jerry Villagas. Then the war started
Yes.
when it was president number 3, when some people who were self-saving at that time to say, no, the BMF's job is to give you the MDs.
Yes.
And the president at that time, who was the first African woman, was, no, but it's okay, put your name in the hat, and then we'll evaluate them to make sure that we put our best foot
Yes.
forward. And that's where the war broke, because some people felt entitled that if they can't be the president,
Then
let
they
them
shouldn't
at
be.
least be the first deputy president, so that the second deputy president, bringing the nomenclature of labor
Yes.
into business,
Into business.
whereas business has its own.
Yes.
You can't look at the oppressed, who oppressed you for 350 years, now to be your savior. There is nothing more unequal as treating 2 people that are unequal equally.
One could then say, especially given the names that you are mentioning, these are all people that are rich, that have got a lot of money. So why should an ordinary person take any of these organizations seriously? Because it either says that you get in there, you become rich, or you become rich in order to get in there. And how does it actually, how do any of these business federations, how do they impact someone on the ground, Kumabopani, who doesn't have a job? Why should they be interested at all in that?
You see, as Black people, we need to be comfortable with the fact that Black does not equal poor. Poor does not equal dirty,
Yes. Disorganized.
disorganized.
Yes, and all of those things.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It doesn't. The reason why we struggled is so that we can also graduate to be big business and be not so poor. Being rich is okay. Profit is good because it allows us to do stuff. It's what you do with those profits. It's how you behave once you are not too poor. That's why all the elections of the ANC, all of them, every 5 years, they talk about a better life for all. Better means you found 2 million people on social security. You can't celebrate that now.
There's 28.
Yeah, there's 28 million on
Yes,
social security.
and
As if you have achieved
as if you achieved something,
When
yes.
you found 2 million, your job was to make sure that you eliminate the 2 million.
No, the president,
So that
celebrated that we now have 28 million people that are on social grants, and he went into detail about the 18 million that are getting the 350, and about 10 million that are getting that COVID grant, which we have apparently it's a success.
That's where I think we are making a mistake. Because when you are a Black person or a woman and you have the privilege of being put in spaces where ordinarily we don't get to, you've got 2 choices. You can sit there and celebrate being the only Black and the only woman. and feel good. Or you can use this temporary occupation to say, I'm going to kick down
This borrowed power.
and bring people that look like me. And that's what we're struggling for. To say, whenever you're in a position, bring down the ceiling. To make sure that you bring other blacks.
Yes.
You bring other people that look like you. Whether it's LGBTQI+, you bring them in.
Yes.
That's the only measure to say we've made progress. The people today that are still celebrating, the only black, the only woman, they are suffering from this syndrome. Because, you see, we need to bring and come up with solutions ourselves. You can't look at the oppressed, who oppressed you for 350 years, now to be your savior.
Yes.
Because Patrice Lumumba taught us that the duration of oppression is always
Limited by the endurance of the oppressed.
determined by the oppressed,
Yes.
not by the oppressed. Because it's like trying to get the turkey excited about Christmas.
Yes.
But the progressive people in business know that we can be sustainable in the short term.
Yes.
But the trick is to bring long-term resilience.
Yes.
And there's only been long-term resilience when many black people can afford the goods and the
You
services
mentioned
we
that in
provide.
your book. You mentioned that in Behold the Turtle. You mentioned the issue of gender equity. You mentioned the lack of women leadership in very strategic places. You go into detail about the number of women as a percentage of the total population of the country versus the number of women as a percentage of CEOs. And the question I need to ask, and I'm going to ask Jackie about this thing. Jackie, you are a woman in the room, right? So help me understand this. When issues of gender equity are discussed, but they're discussed by men like Prof.Bonang and myself in a book, does it matter to you that it's being raised? It's a man who's leading the battle, or how do you feel about it?
I think both parties should be able to have that conversation. I mean, whether we like it or not, a lot of the spaces that women occupy are already male dominated. And if we're going to have conversations about transformation, we need the very people who need to be transformed and renewed in their minds to be part of that conversation. I think what's happening right now is that we've got too many echo chambers. So women speak amongst themselves and they can't solve anything. Men speak amongst themselves and they can't solve anything. So there needs to almost be a collaboration of both genders in those kinds of conversations. So I mean, I applaud people like, Dr. Mohale speaking about what is happening in terms of the disparities, the obstacles, the challenges that women are facing, because it tells me, as someone who is in a position to make a difference and to transform the space, that he's actually aware that change needs to happen. I think you can't change what you don't acknowledge, and the fact that he's acknowledging it says something about I think being able to make advances in that conversation.
Well, but there's a feminine radical ideology that has developed over time, which basically says, as a man, shut up, don't say anything that has to do with women. Whatever you're saying, you are mansplaining. And I always tell you this, like, the way when I try to figure out if this is the person that am I safe to say, to speak openly with this woman or not, is how they pronounce men. If they pronounce men like it's got double M, like men, then I know I'm not safe, right? So what of that then? That the view that says, no, but men should just shut up. You are privileged, shut up. Let's tell you how this thing is supposed to happen.
Yeah, and I think I'm probably going to reiterate the same point. And I think women also play a role in creating those safe spaces where men can contribute to the thinking around how we bring transformation, because we require both parties. It's literally hands on deck. This is not something that men on their own can solve, and this is not something that women on their own can solve. So I do think that we have still those challenges where women are becoming an obstacle to the very transformation they want to see, because they continue to exclude men who have the power to bring transformation into those kinds of conversations. So I think, Lirin, the transformation is not just men on their own, or transforming these very male-dominated types of spaces. It's also, again, getting women to understand that it works on both ends. It really, really, really does. And I think that is probably a big problem in why it's taken so long, because what is the point of us being so radical and being so hostile to men and saying, like, as we next,
You're going to be cancelled, Wena. You're going to be cancelled.
What's the point?
Switch off the mic. Switch off the mic.
What's the point? Because also, at the end of the day, but it runs across the board. Every time we talk about white capitalist monopoly and all of those things, these are the people who are sitting at the seat of power. And these are the people that if we do not bring them on the table, that we're not going to get the transformation that we're looking for. So I think women must just hold space and give space to men to be part of the very transformation and change that we want to see.
And that's what that's the next point I was going to bring to Prof. Mohale here. White monopoly capital. It is a term that has gained a lot of traction. Very unsure of what it means sometimes, but loosely translated, guys at Stellenbosch and JSE companies that hold money, that do not want black people to own land, they don't want black people to be successful in companies, etc. The only thing is when these terms are being discussed, they are being discussed by someone with metric on Twitter. But that person has got so much power over, it's got authority over this capital, and some of them spell capital wrong, but that's not the point. Is there white monopoly capital? I really want to know, and it's an honest question. Is there white monopoly capital, or is it a politically loaded term that says, every time I do not service you and deliver my promise to you as the government of the day, I want a get out of jail free card by pointing a finger elsewhere? What is your understanding, Prof, about white monopoly capital and the weaponization of it, and what do you think is happening there? And maybe it is a true thing.
I think we are really talking about genuine things now. But first I need to acknowledge Major Colin's input. I was getting goosebumps listening to it, because I honestly agree with everything that she says.
Yeah, sometimes she speaks sense sometimes.
And to add to that, transformation is too important a task to be left only to women. It needs men too. The same way that politically speaking, we used to say, too many things have been said about us for us, but very seldom with us.
Yes.
Therefore, it's about how you strike that balance. And for me, it goes back to saying where we are as a people with great natural endowments, 30 years into democracy, it is still too early to be led by another white male. Therefore, when you announce a moonshot pact, and your name is John Steenhuisen, is to have the discernment and the sensitivity to say, I am a white male, I am privileged. And my party is a conglomeration of people who used to be the oppressors. Therefore, visionary leadership says, we have thought it out in the party, now called the DA. We will call it the Moonshot Pact as a holding name now. Let's discuss it with other opposition parties.
So they're going to correct you to say it's a multi-party charter.
It came after.
Yes.
It came after.
Yeah.
I present to the other opposition parties so that they are free to change the name if they want to. To say, this is how far we have gone with our thinking. Take out what is not relevant, add whatever is missing. And by the way, I'm not going to be the president, because I understand it's still too early for me, a white male, to stand up for presidency. The president must come from you, black people. That's exactly what we're talking about. Had he done that, he would have been a hero. The second thing is when you say, I want to unite all the opposition parties, because first 15 years into our democracy, I think our problem was the ANC, because they didn't deliver the basics that they said they would. But the last 10 years, our problem is actually the opposition parties who don't seize the opportunity to say the writing is on the wall. Can we club together and see whether we can change this fundamentally to have a better life for all?
But John,
had they done that, then this Moonshot Pact would have been announced by a black person in those oppositions, and the understanding would be, I'm not going to be
well,
the
Prof. William Gumede is there.
Yeah, I'm not going to be the president. He was the
Convener.
master of ceremonies and therefore the convener. He's not an
I
active
see.
participant.
So he
He's
can't
a
dictate the
facilitator.
direction.
Yeah, he's a facilitator.
Yeah.
So the day you are serious about transformation, it's about internalizing. So when I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, is to do exactly that. To say I'm agitating and orchestrating with the little power that I've got to kick down the corporate doors, to let women in and set them up for success with their input. So that I give it to them to say, this is how far I've got. Now you take the lead to make sure that I stand behind you, because I have been leading for 50 years. But on issues of gender equality, I want to be led by you. That is true and genuine vision. Lastly, the other notion that is not easily appreciated is to say equality is not justice. What we fought for is social justice. Because you can't just say you've all voted for 30 years, now we are equal, forget about this transformation thing. Let's move on with life. There is nothing more unequal as treating two people that are unequal equally and still say you have been completely fair. So there's a wonderful meme that's doing the round in the 70s of this little black boy who's trying to watch a match but can't because he's too short. And this tall white man who can watch everything about the match. And the only solution is the crates. There are 3 crates. And in the middle, maybe a colored person, or
Yes.
an Indian person.
Yes.
And the solution ends up being the little boy needs 2 crates to stand on to see the match. The one in the middle needs only 1, and all 3 can see. But people who don't understand social justice will say, but why didn't you give the white man at least 1 crate? When the white man could already see. And that's the appreciation that we should have. To say, if it is about providing a solution, you can't say affirmative action is reverse discrimination. Because affirmative action is there to correct the past injustice.
Yeah, because there was
Which is apartheid.
there was Job Reservation Act of 1965, etc., etc.
In fact, there were 110 pieces of legislation whose job it is to oppress black people. So it's not like black people were lazy and they got themselves down there. 110 pieces of legislation. Habakkuk Shikwan was the finest cane maker in this country. But there was a law that says black people can't get into manufacturing. So he went to Buputaswan. Secondly, it said, if you are a black person, you can't own a business in town. If you are a shopkeeper, there was a law that said you can only keep 58 items. And the inspector would come and count. If there was 59, you got a fine. On the 3rd strike, they took your license. Now we don't know where the 10 mafia bosses are. Now we are free. We don't know the dirty dozen that gave us the 2 weeks in July of 2021
Unrest.
of a failed insurrection and rampant looting.
Sure. So, Mohale, do you see why I was asking for more time?
So now let me answer your question that you asked.
Yes.
To say, how then do we move forward, especially with terms like white monopoly capital?
Correct.
So first, is there white monopoly capital? You see, if we don't understand the genesis of terms, we'll provide wrong medication. During the height of state capture, the people who were stealing government's money, which is your and my money,
Yes.
hired a company called Bell Pottinger.
Yes, from the UK.
PR company.
Yes.
Paid them £380,000 a month to say, when these blacks say, but you are stealing our money, what should our response be? And they coined 2 phrases that were genius. The first was when they say you are thieves and you are effecting state capture and it rests on 4 legs, you must say white monopoly capital. Because up until then, business was still big and primarily white. And the people that lived in Sandton were still white and primarily rich. And the black people were in Soweto and in Alexander. So it made sense. Secondly, they said you must talk about radical economic transformation, because almost 20 years into democracy, poverty still looks black, still looks feminine. Who wouldn't resonate with that? The genius was in it. But if you understand who coined it, you don't want to associate yourself with the Guptas. Therefore, you don't want to use it. But when you peel this onion and say, but when you go to the substance, we are 30 years into democracy. What is our problem today? One has to admit that business has not done enough to transform. Business has not done enough to bring in black people and women in great numbers. The Employment Equity Commission does a piece of work. And I want to even talk about the BE Commission that was chaired by Zodwa Manase. And it says we have now just graduated as black people representation into positions of leadership on the 20th anniversary of producing this report. Now black people are 14.3, now moved to 14.7% of the C-suite. And we must celebrate that. At this rate, it will take us 300 years to be broadly reflective of the demographics. Because black people in general, the definition is all those that excluded on the basis that they are not white are 90% of the population. And white people are 10%. In absolute terms, white people today are 8.3% of the population. 10% is so-called colored, and Africans 79%. And the intent of transformation is to ensure that we are broadly reflective of these demographics. Indian population, less than 3%, far less than 3%. That is the intent. If all of us are serious, and that's what we want, the 60.02 million South Africans, 51% of them are female. Therefore, we need to say in positions of leadership, at least 51% must be female. Women representation into this C-suite is less than 20%. African women is less than 4%. So you see, we still have a long way to go.
It is definitely a long way. It is definitely a long way to go, and I knew that we were going to get here. And my boss has given permission for us to do part 2, so we are going to end it here, Prof, and we're going to get into part 2 of the show. Thank you very much for joining us. You had Professor Mohale, and this is really the heart of the discussion that we wanted to have, and that's why we promised you we're going to bring you political and business leaders that will help us make sense of our country, so that when we go to the elections, we are all better informed and empowered to ask the right questions and to be able to discern from the political parties that will be campaigning whether they are saying the stuff that will take us forward or not. Stay tuned for the part 2 of this show. But remember, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is always interested in you.